A new Raiders head coach has emerged, and we're going to talk about who that is here in just a moment. I'm Mitchell Renz. This is the Raiders Report, and if you're looking for everything that there is to know around the Raiders head coaching search, you're in the right place. I want you to leave today's show knowing every person that would be on that Raiders head coach tracker right now, the interviews that are scheduled, the expected interviews that are going to come, and then at the very, very end of today's show, I'm going to tell you, if I was sitting in a room with Mark Davis, if I was sitting in a room with Tom Brady, I would tell them that they absolutely, positively need to do something tomorrow because there's a really big thing that's going to happen today. There's also a really important thing that's going to happen tomorrow around who that next Raiders head coach could potentially be. If you want to stay up to date on everything going on around the silver and black, make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Make sure those notifications are turned on. This is the time of the year where those noties, honestly, man, you got to be a part of the noti gang. If you don't know what the noti gang is, go down in the comments right when this video starts. You're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. But it's really important to stay up to date. I mean, I want people to subscribe to this show. That way they know more about the Raiders than all of their friends. Also, I will be live tonight for the Penn State-Notre Dame game. I will be live tomorrow for the college football game, Texas-Ohio State. I'm also going to be live for the Broncos game, and I'm going to be live for the Chargers game 30 minutes before kickoff. Hope to see you there. All right, let's get into the very first thing, and basically one of the big reasons why I wanted to do this show early this morning. According to CBS's Jonathan Jones, the Raiders are expected to have interest in Robert Saleh to be their next head coach. Saleh was fired by the New York Jets after the season. He has spent time with the Jets as that head coach, defensive-minded guy. Also spent some time with the San Francisco 49ers as their defensive coordinator. I will say this, though. I have followed a lot of, beat reporters. I follow a lot of people, and I'm very tapped with who I think is well connected with the Raiders and people who I don't think are well connected with the Raiders. I don't really know how well connected Jonathan Jones is, so all I'm going to say is this. If we get 100% confirmed that the Raiders are going to go out and potentially interview Robert Saleh, I'll at least do an update down in the comments, or I'll put something out on social media at Mitchell Renz 365. And the only reason why that I say that is because I know there's a lot of really good people that cover the NFL, but I also know that not a lot of these people in the NFL maybe have as many sources simply because of all the turnover that the Raiders have had between John Gruden, Josh McDaniels, Antonio Pierce, a lot of moving parts. And I think that you kind of saw that earlier this week when Mike Garafolo reported that the Raiders are going to keep Antonio Pierce, but he was just saying that because that's what he was hearing. All I am simply saying is this. The fact that it's being reported that the Raiders are interested in Saleh, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are. He is a damn good coach. I don't know if he's built to be a head coach, but let me ask you this question here. Would you want the Raiders to hire Robert Saleh to be their head coach? This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show, which means you're about to get hit with the YouTube ad break. I want you to scroll on down and give me your answer. My answer would be no. I would not want to hire Robert Saleh to be my head coach, not because that I don't think he's good. I would say Saleh is an upgrade over somebody like Antonio Pierce, so even if they did, I think that we would be moving in the right direction. The reason why I say no is because there are better candidates out there. If the Silver and Black wanted to hire Saleh to be their defensive coordinator, I'm not going to lie, where do I sign up? You guys know that I love Patrick Graham. And I would still love to be able to keep PG because I think keeping PG also means we get to keep this defensive staff. And my favorite guy on that coaching staff for the Raiders on defense is Rob Leonard. And I really want to be able to keep Rob, and I'm worried if we lose PG, we're going to lose Rob just because of how close of a relationship those two have. But again, with Saleh, I think he ends up taking the defensive coordinator job for the 49ers. If you follow tea leaves, if you follow the rumors, where there's smoke, there's fire. A lot of rumors around Saleh, and then the 49ers end up firing their DC and kind of like strange timing overall. But again, Saleh, solid coach. I do think he'd be an upgrade over Antonio Pierce. Personally, I think he got shafted in New York. You can make an argument that guy got shafted in New York more than what the Antonio Pierce did in the Raiders. But it was the right move for the Jets, I believe, to move on from Saleh, just like it was the right move for the Raiders to move on from Antonio Pierce. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through like a head coach tracker in a sense of all the names that have been linked to the Raiders, and I'm just going to give you all the information that I know on all of those dudes. First one is Bill Belichick. I made a show yesterday because it was reported that the Raiders reached out to Bill, and obviously, everyone's like, oh my God, he's already got a job at North Carolina, and yes, he does already have a job at North Carolina, but he does have a clause in his contract that indicates if he wanted to take a job in the NFL, he can actually get out of that, contract in North Carolina. If it happens before June 1st, then the Raiders would have to pay Bill, or technically North Carolina, an extra $10 million. If it were to happen after like June 1st, it would only be $1 million, though it was also reported yesterday, right after the video went out and kind of like everything ended up going down around the story, that the Raiders just reached out to Bill to pick his brain. And, this is just one of those things where I think it's really, really smart by organizations to do this type of thing. And I don't want to be the guy where, and I know there's going to be people down in the comments who are like, oh, we're going back to the Patriot way. We're not going back to the Patriot way. Like, that's not what this team or organization is going to do at all. But why would you not, if you're Tom Brady and Mark Davis, pick the brain of a head coach that has won more Super Bowls, that has won more than anybody else in the NFL, and really did truly build a dynasty with Tom Brady, a guy that's going to be calling a lot of the shots this season. So they reached out to Bill, not because they were interested in him being a head coach, solely just like, hey man, let me pick your brain a little bit. I want to get this train back on the tracks. All right, now let's go to the expected interest for the Raiders. These are coaches that it has not been confirmed that they are interviewing, but it is expected that the Raiders will interview them. First name, Mike Vrabel. And, we all know that Mike Vrabel is very well connected. He's the front runner for this job. But I will say this is a very important day to follow some Vrabel news, because he is going to interview with the New England Patriots today. I'm not saying that the Patriots are going to hire him today. I have to go check some of the other interviews that they've had. I'm not sure if they've satisfied the Rooney Rule, but Vrabel is also the front runner in New England. If I was a betting man, I would say that Vrabel would probably like that job with New England more than he would like the job with the Las Vegas Raiders, simply because he's going to be able to call more shots. He's going to have a little bit more control. And when you listen to some of the things that Vrabel is looking for, and if you don't know what Vrabel is looking for, there is a video down in the comments, down in the description of today's show, where I outline the three main things that Mike Vrabel is looking for in whatever team he takes over for next. And when you look at those three things, it definitely is more of a New England Patriots feel than a Las Vegas Raiders feel. That video went out on Monday. That's the video where I said that there's still a chance that the Raiders move on from Antonio Pierce, so please go check it out. Even if you didn't want the Raiders to move on from AP, even if you're still mad about it, it's still important to know everything that's going on around this team, especially around Vrabel. So please, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. All right, I do want to get into some other expected interest in terms of some of these guys, but before I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor here, Game Time. And Game Time is one of those apps where I do think it's really focused on trying to bring people together. And, I always say, you might not remember the score of a game that you went to, but you will remember all the awesome memories that you have. And, when you think about Raiders games, I don't know if I want to remember the score all too often. In the past 30 years, the team that has lost the most games in the past 30 years, the Raiders. How about that? But Game Time's got a new feature. It's called Game Time Pick. So when you're on the app and you're searching around for tickets, which I was actually looking at some stuff yesterday because my fiance Alex, she's out of town and she's coming back in on Saturday. I was like, maybe we could potentially do something. She's been obsessed with Dancing with the Stars. But how about this? Hypothetically speaking, right? If I wanted to go to the Cotton Bowl, I could go here on Game Time, which you guys can see right here, kind of how the app looks. You have the all-in pricing, but then I recommend that you click on the Game Time Picks, which is going to give you the best ticket prices out there. So right now their super deal, which says the top 1 percentile, I'll admit it's still up there a little bit. But what I like about Game Time is you can totally take the guesswork out of buying tickets. And if the longer and longer you wait, the closer and closer the event gets, the price does go down. So if anybody wants to go to a fun game, let me know. Go down in the comments, get started with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS. That's CHATSPORTS. You can also see it on my hat right here. Shout out to Game Time for sponsoring the Raiders Report. Obviously, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's time for you to get started with Game Time. All right, let's go to some of these other expected interest here. Liam Coen, offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and this is the name that I have already said. Outside of Ben Johnson, who we'll talk about here in a moment, Liam Coen is actually the dude that I would be most interested to hire simply because of what he is able to show in college and in the NFL on offense. I mean, the Buccaneers are a top 4 offense in every single statistical category there is. Total yards, passing yards per game, rushing yards per game, points per game. I think that's pretty good. He's done a great job with Baker Mayfield, did a phenomenal job with Will Levis in college. The difference of what Will Levis looked like in college, and then you're like, oh, it's college, the NFL. But watch Will Levis throw a football. much, much different with Liam Coen. And like, you can even see a lot of difference in how that Kentucky team played when he was there and when he wasn't there. I know he had one bad year with the Rams, but they also lost their quarterback due to injury. Liam Coen is legit. And I think that if you get a young guy in the Sean McVay tree, again, this is somebody that I really like. Pete Carroll, I'll be real, I think is more of a name would be more likely than Coen, because everybody that I talk to, it sounds like the Raiders want a head coach with experience, and they want to be able to win right away. And they want somebody that they feel like can compete with Jim Harbaugh, with Sean Payton, with Andy Reid. And if you're looking at those three names, I would imagine that the Raiders are looking at resumes. And if you're looking at resumes, Pete Carroll's resume is better than Liam Coen's, though I would hire Liam Coen over Pete Carroll. Last name here is Brian Flores, and this has been a name that I've discussed a few times, and it's because I thought that Flores and Tom Brady still didn't have a good relationship. Also, if you see the camera move at all, it's Chuck. He's in shambles. It's snowing outside here in Dallas, and he wants to get out there, and he wants to check it out. So, I know. Hello to everybody out there. But Brian Flores is expected to interview with the Raiders. I was told that it's all good in the hood when it comes to Flores and Tom Brady. I was told on Tuesday that interview is like already going to happen, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. So just keep an eye out for it. Just wanted to be able to keep you up to date there. Confirmed interview requests that are guaranteed. The Raiders have already submitted those. Now, there is a big difference between interview request and like you're going to have an interview. Like a team can turn down the interview, which we've already seen a few teams do it. For example, I want to say it was the Dallas Cowboys turned down one of the teams that wanted to interview Mike McCarthy for their head coach. I believe it was the Chicago Bears off the top of my head. But teams can do that. If it is a lateral move, so like defensive coordinator to defensive coordinator position, the team is allowed to turn down the interview. If it is a Patrick Graham DC looking for a head coaching gig, then they're not allowed to turn down that interview. For Patrick Graham, though, because he's not under contract, the Raiders can't turn down any interview that PG wants to take, for example. He's going to interview with the Jags for their head coaching job, and he's going to interview for the Bengals for their DC job. All right, so the confirmed interview requests are Todd Monken. I discussed that one late last night in a short here on YouTube. The OC for the Baltimore Ravens did a really good job with Brock Bowers and that Georgia offense for 3 years, and he's done, honestly, miracles with Lamar Jackson. And before everybody goes, oh, well, Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson, I also remember a lot of Raider fans that said that I was crazy for when Lamar was out there in 2022 and we could have potentially gone out and got him. Lamar Jackson looks like he's playing the best football of his NFL career, and that's because Todd Monken, I think, does a really good job of saying, okay, here's the talent that I have. Here's the talent that I'm going to go with. I'll be real, Monken does make me a little bit nervous because he might be one of those guys where I'm like, he's probably a better OC than he is a head coach. But I do think if that thought ever goes through your mind of, that guy might be a better OC than a head coach, Tom Brady's going to be doing a lot of the shot calling, right? Like a lot of the shot calling, and he's going to be taking a little bit of a back seat to Tom Brady. So if you're worried about somebody being a head coach, but you like what they do on the offensive side of the football, my only request is don't panic too much because, again, Brady's going to be the one calling the shots. Steve Spagnuolo, defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. I like the fact that they reached out to him, and I said this yesterday on a show where I was like, even if you don't want to hire Steve Spagnuolo, why would you not want to get an inside look at what the defending Super Bowl back-to-back champs, the best team in the NFL since 2019, if you could potentially take away your defensive coordinator from Kansas City, and this is another guy where, didn't do a good job being a head coach, but again, we got to be able to start playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers, and I think a chess-like move is going, I don't care if we hire Steve Spagnuolo or not, bring him in. Tell me what you guys are doing over there in Kansas City. Let me pick your brain a little bit because if he does want to become a head coach, if he goes into an interview, if he accepts the interview, he's going to go into that interview trying to get the job. And if you're trying to go in and get the job, you have an opportunity to get a little bit of a inside look and see what's going on there in Kansas City. The last name here for confirmed interview request is Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator. And this is another name that I think he's done a great job in Detroit, though I'm pretty confident he's going to go to New Orleans. He's got a lot of New Orleans ties there. He coached there from, I want to say, 2016 to 2020. And when I talk to a lot of my Saints guys here at Chat Sports, it's all the beat reporters are talking about Aaron Glenn the same way a lot of these Raiders guys, myself included, are kind of talking about somebody like, sorry, there was just an update that came in just around, Mike Vrabel. All right, the last name, and it's this, Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson is actually going to interview with the Raiders tomorrow on Friday. I'll be real. I didn't think Ben Johnson would even take the interview, though I think for Johnson, who is the top regarded candidate out there in these circles, he should take every interview. And why would I take every interview? Because if you take every interview, that means there's a lot of interest out there, which means you're going to have to drive up that price. So one of the things that I said when I started this show today was I would do something if I was the Raiders. And you got two options now. And I think one of the things, again, where there's smoke, there's a little bit of fire. The Raiders know that Mike Vrabel is interviewing today. So they also have a Ben Johnson interview tomorrow. I think that good organizations line up what they want first, and they set their priorities straight. I think if you're the Raiders and your top two candidates are Mike Vrabel or Ben Johnson, that sounds like that this team is actually doing what's smart and moving in the right direction. You also look at a lot of these other candidates that they're looking at. There's a really solid candidate pool here for the silver and black. But if I was the Raiders and I got Ben Johnson on a call, I'm not kidding you. I put this tweet out yesterday, and I linked a picture to one of my favorite movies when I was growing up as a kid. First off, if you've never seen the movie Blank Check, go check it out. But it's also funny that how long ago that movie was where a kid gets a blank check and he's like, $1 million. Let's be real. If I got a blank check right now, there's a lot more zeros on that check, no doubt about it. But I would offer Ben Johnson almost a blank check. And you can't say like almost, because if I'm Ben Johnson, I'm just going to rack that money up. But I'm not kidding you when I say this. If the Raiders have an opportunity to get Ben Johnson, and Johnson looks at Mark Davis and Tom Brady and goes, I am interested in the job, and I would take the job, but I got to be the highest paid head coach in the NFL, I would do it. And the only reason why that I would do it is because when you might end up spending more money on hiring the wrong guys. Josh McDaniels, Antonio Pierce, and John Gruden could still be kind of, up in the air for some people. But to me, 10 years, $100 million guaranteed. John Gruden wasn't even close to that type of money. Losing seasons, never won a playoff game, disaster in free agency trades, and draft overall. But if I was the Raiders, I would offer Ben Johnson a blank check. And I know there's going to be a lot of people out there like, oh, Mitch, Mark Davis is cash poor. He doesn't have as much money cash-wise as a lot of other owners out there. But this guy is a billionaire, and he turned the Raiders into now a top 6 overall market. Does he have money to spend? Maybe not like some of these other owners out there. I'm not going to lie to you. But he would not have fired Antonio Pierce if he didn't think or know that he was going to be able to pay another head coach, right? I think it's also one of the reasons why you're seeing the Raiders bring in a lot of these other minority owners, which was something that I talked about in the offseason based on a thing that I was told like 2 years ago, which I've talked about a few times, that the Raiders are going to try to build their franchise kind of similar to like the way the Dodgers did, where they bring in a bunch of these owners, they have a lot of money to spend, and they can go out and they can spend big because they have the money, they have the pockets, and there's a lot of hands out there instead of just Mark Davis. Tom Brady's got some money too the last time that I checked. But regardless, I know the Raiders are paying Josh McDaniels. I know the Raiders are paying John Gruden. I know the Raiders are paying Antonio Pierce. That's about $30 million right there per year in coaches that aren't going to coach. So adding $20 million plus to Ben Johnson, it's a big number, right? $50 million in head coaches, it's a lot. But you know what? It's not your money. It's not my money. It doesn't count against the salary cap. And quite frankly, I don't care if Mark Davis is paying $50 million per year to head coaches. It does not impact the Raiders whatsoever. And if he's going to charge the ticket prices that he's going to charge for the product that's been on the field, shit, make him pay $50 million to make us get a good head coach. Because if we get Ben Johnson, I'm telling you right now, we are an instant contender just because of the magic that guy's been able to do in Detroit. I know a lot of people are like, well, we should have given AP another chance because of Dan Campbell. I want you to look at what Dan Campbell and the Lions looked like before Ben Johnson and after Ben Johnson. I'm going to see how many people actually do that homework because Dan Campbell looks a lot different, and I'm very curious to see what Campbell and that Lions team looks like next year when they lose Aaron Glenn. When they lose Ben Johnson, you're going to get a real test here from Campbell. But Johnson's the top guy out there. He's the top candidate. And I would offer him a deal north of $20 million per year. And the reason why that you got to offer him that type of contract is simply because Andy Reid's the highest paid head coach right now, making $20 million per year. Then it's Sean Payton at 18. Then there's a few other coaches, 15, 16. And if you're Johnson and you want to get him in the Raiders, I don't know how else you do it. Like, I think if you don't offer him to be the highest paid head coach in the NFL, I don't really know why he would take the gig. Like, to me, I think if Johnson's probably going to look at a place maybe like Chicago. I know it's like really been linked there. They have a high draft pick. They have Caleb Williams. There's been other teams, that have shown some interest in him as well. But Mark, I'm not kidding you. You want to win football games? You want to pack that stadium? You want to make some money? Let's spend some money on the smart decision here. And yeah, you're going to pay a lot. But if we're willing to pay $40 million for a quarterback like Derek Carr, and I know I'm bringing up Derek because I saw some tweet pop up on me this morning, but I want a good head coach. Let's go out and get a good head coach. Let's give him a blank check. I know you got the money to do it, and I want to just win, baby. So before I get out of here, I do want to say again, I'm going to be live tonight, Penn State, Notre Dame. I'm going to be rooting for Penn State, though I just got a text. I'm not going to have Chugs tonight with me. It is snowing. It's really shitty outside right now, and Chugs is like 20 minutes away from the studio. I can just walk to the studio, so I'm going to be able to get there. It's going to be me, and it's going to be one of our other Pennsylvania guys. His name's Chip. I'll be honest. I don't know if he's a Penn State or a Notre Dame guy, but I'm going to be rooting for Penn State. If you're going to be rooting against Notre Dame and you like hanging out with us during Thursday Night Football during the season, if you liked hanging out with us last Thursday, we had 300,000 people watch our Georgia versus Notre Dame watch party. It was electric, dude. We had so much fun. We're going to get wet. We're going to get wild. We're going to have a great time. Also, though, if you're like Mitch, I also want to be able to watch some other games and I want to be able to do some other watch parties. I am going to be doing a lot, and I mean a lot of other, shows this week. I'm literally, I ain't taking off day. I'm going to be working at something like 16, 17 straight days at Chat Sports, but I'm going to be real. It's because I had the eye injury and I got to make up some PTO. That's just me being real with y'all, which is why I hope that you subscribe to the show. I try to be as real as humanly possible. But if you also want to watch all of our other watch parties, we got a bunch of stuff going on at Chat Sports. Every single playoff game, every single college football game. It's not always going to be me, but it's always going to be somebody from our Chat Sports team, and everybody does a great job here. So if you want to go check it out, subscribe to Chat Sports. I also put that link for you guys down in the comments, down in the description here of today's show. Before I get out of here, I did just see a report come in, and I don't really think that there's anything going on. It's from Graziano, and he's talking about Liam Coen, and he's talking about Cliff Kingsbury, and he's talking about Todd Monken. Or actually, he's just reporting that Todd Monken is a sleeper and Liam Coen is somebody to watch. So again, I think that is an example of you got a guy who not really following along all that well because those are names that we already know, which I think goes back to the thing that I originally started with just because it's reported out there, let's wait until some of these other guys that have got a few more connections can double confirm it. But the reason why I did want to make this show, name to keep in mind, Robert Saleh was apparently, or the Raiders are apparently interested in interviewing Robert Saleh from CBS's Jonathan Jones. If we get any more information on that, I'll do my best to keep you up to date for news, for updates around the Raiders. Make sure you're subscribed. And if you don't subscribe, Chuck is going to be very disappointed in you. For more updates here around the silver and black, click the subscribe button right here. I promise you, I got you covered. For more videos, these personally are some of Chuck's favorites. I think you should click on them. You're going to enjoy them. If you want even more content from the silver and black here, click this bad boy right here. Tons and tons of content all day, every day here on the Raiders Report. I better see you here tonight.